Well, hello again, folks. Welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. This one here is important because it does involve, well, all of them are important, I guess. This does involve some serious money issues over time. You know, we don't really think about our cars as kind of like we look at a boat. You know what I heard a boat was? It's a hole in the lake that you pour money into. Have you ever felt like that? I felt like that with my camper. It's a hole in my backyard that I pour money into. But we did have a wonderful experience recently. We went camping. And then this past weekend, had a wonderful Easter experience with the fam. But I decided that the grandkids were coming over, so I was going to get my four-wheeler out. And they love to ride on that thing. Of course, I always make them wear a helmet, and they're always sitting right in front of me. And I don't go really fast, at least when their mothers are watching. But I thought I ought to check the gas. You know, it doesn't have a gas gauge, so I have to take the cap off, look down in there, and it was pretty close to empty, so put gas in it. Then I said, how long has it been since I checked the air pressure in the tires? Guess how much air? Well, there's no reason for you to know. 4 pounds. I think the fronts had 4 and the rears had like 5. Now, they're not supposed to have a lot, but they're supposed to have a lot more than that. And, four-wheelers are dangerous anyway, and if you have 4 pounds of pressure in it and you try to take a turn, the tires can just kind of roll under and you can be hurled. And I certainly don't want that to happen with them. And then I said, you know what? I don't remember the last time I had this thing serviced. I better check the oil. So this thing has this little dipstick on the side you have to unscrew. I pull it out, wipe it off. That's what you always do. You pull it out, wipe it off, stick it back in, pull it back out. Nothing. There was no oil on the stick. Shame on you, car guru. Well, I never said I was a four-wheeler guru, did I? But I was checking things. I was checking the operation, the safety, and then finally the oil. So I had some oil. And at this point, it really didn't matter what brand or what viscosity. I just poured it in. Well, I had to get a funnel, so I stuck the funnel in there, and I started pouring the oil out of the 1-gallon container. But then it slipped out of my hand and ended up dumping a whole bunch of oil in there. They don't hold a lot. So now I've overfilled it with oil. Is that bad? Can you have too much oil in the engine? You absolutely can. Too much oil can cause damage. Overfilling can lead to increased oil pressure. The oil can foam up. You get reduced lubrication from that. Potential overheating can lead to total engine failure. So I had to get that oil out of there. So I pulled the drain plug, drained it out, put the drain plug back in, and put the correct amount of oil in the engine. So I feel better now. Now, do you do this kind of stuff yourself? I know a lot of you guys probably do. You'll probably change oil in your lawnmower like every 8 years or so, even though you're supposed to do it every season. I mean, that's the way most people, now I'm serious, most people do not maintain their stuff. And when they do what? Especially when it comes to cars, where do most people go to get their oil changed? And why do they go there? Most people go to the fast lube place. Just for sake of expediency, let's call it Jiffy Lube, because I think they're the big dog in the market. So let's talk about Jiffy Lube for just a minute. And and why do they go there? Because, oil changes, they're probably getting ready to drive around Powell's or something, and they see a Jiffy Lube next door, and then they say, got to get my oil changed. I'm going to get my big T, and then I'm going to go get my oil changed. Just sit there and wait in line. It's possibly they're real organized folks and they have it in their calendar to get their oil changed every 6 months or, 90 days or every 5,000 miles, whichever comes first. Or they have that little sticker up in their windshield as a reminder. But why Jiffy Lube? Why go to a fast lube place? Most people would say because it's convenient and it's fast and you can just sit in line there and, update your Facebook feed and Instagram. Watch a few TikTok videos and just move up, just kind of like waiting at a drive-through restaurant, right? You just get her done. But why there? Why not just go to a dealership, make an appointment, and go to a dealership and get it done? Most people say, well, because it's more expensive at the dealership. Well, is it? Have you shopped around lately? I was looking at a Jiffy Lube national menu. It's online. They call it the Signature Service Oil Change. And they'll change your oil up to 5 quarts. They'll put on a new filter. If you're driving a Honda, is it a Honda filter? No. If you're driving a Ford, is it a Ford filter? Motorcraft? No. No, it's an off-brand filter. It's the cheapest filter that they can find through their purchasing power. And, it's probably costs them like $1.50, $2. And they're charging you, $8, $10 for a filter. But it's not what your car was engineered for. What else do they say they're going to do? They're going to check your brake fluid level, serpentine belts, which is good, the condition of the belts, wiper blades, antifreeze coolant levels. I don't know how they do that. If your engine's hot and you just pull in there to get your oil changed, are they going to pull the radiator cap off? No. They're going to look at your coolant overflow tank and see if there's anything in it. And they may add some to it. They're going to check your air filter, it says here, exterior lights, tire pressure, which if it's been like 6 months since you had your oil changed, last time you checked your tire pressures, you're probably down about 10 pounds. Is that safe? Well, no, it's really not. Not when you're, most tires take, 28 to 35 pounds of pressure. So you've probably lost close to a third of what it's supposed to have, and that increases tire wear. But that's just a side point because people don't maintain their stuff, right? I mean, you've got responsibilities that are yours and yours alone. The Jiffy Lube place isn't going to take care of that. The dealership isn't either. There are things that you have to do in your driveway or at the gas pumps or wherever you go, or you have your husband do it or your wife do it or your kid do it. Somebody that's responsible needs to do certain things, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Okay, so I'm criticizing and enlightening, hopefully, at the same time. And I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but you do have a pretty big investment in your vehicle. And if you maintain it properly, it'll last a whole lot longer. And when you go to trade it, or let's say you decide to keep the thing, and I've heard it so many times, people say, I'm going to drive the wheels off of it. Well, you just might. If you're not careful, if you're not checking certain things, the wheels could literally fall off of it. But let's get back to Jiffy Lube, Signature Service Oil Change. If you use conventional oil, and they're going to put a Chinese filter on there, it's $49.99. Now, they have 3 different upgrades, a synthetic blend, which we use a lot of that because that's what's recommended by Ford. Nissan is pretty much full synthetic on everything. The synthetic blend oil change is $69.99. Full synthetic is $89.99. Diesel heavy duty is $119.99. Oh, and then if you want ultimate performance, top tier performance for those who want the very best, it's $104 just in your car. So you go from in a car $89 for full synthetic to $104.9. Doesn't really say what you're getting, what extra value you're getting for that. Well, what would this cost at a dealership? Either that or less. At my dealerships, we offer the first 3 years of maintenance, oil changes, tire rotations, stuff like that, at no charge. So basically, on the front end, we're saving our customers about $900 worth of maintenance cost for the first 3 years. Of course, that depends on how many miles they drive and so forth, but that's 3 years worth of regular maintenance. But one of the reasons that we do that is to make sure the cars are being properly maintained. There are other things, like I said, that are your responsibility. You buy a new car, you think, oh gosh, this thing isn't going to use any oil. Wrong. A lot of cars will use a quart in the first 1,000 miles. And you would be alarmed if that happened, right? But the manufacturer in the warranty book and in owner's manual, it'll say that that's not abnormal. That would freak out a lot of people. And just imagine. I mean, you've been driving your car a couple thousand miles, You see, I just listened to that radio show, that guru nut, and he said I need to check my oil, so I'm going to check it, and nothing shows up on the dipstick. And it was a new car 2 months ago. What happened to all the oil? Well, if there's no, puddles on your driveway or in your garage, it burned it. It slid past those rings on the pistons and got into the combustion chamber and somehow got burnt. And of course, you're going to go into the dealership just screaming and yelling, because your car's using oil and it's a brand new car. But now here's the truth of the matter is you get your car serviced, and that oil usage will go down to very little. It might drop a quarter of a mark on your dipstick between oil changes, and that's what you want to see. Now, if it's excessive, it does it a second time, then what the dealership is going to request you to do is do an oil consumption test. This is not something that rises to the level of a buyback of a lemon. You could have an internal engine problem that's causing this. It could be a number of different things. It doesn't have to be something wrong with your internal engine. It could be one of the sensors. It could be an EGR valve. It could be a lot of different things that can cause excessive oil consumption. The key is to find out what's doing it. What's the cause? But they need to do an oil consumption test, so they'll change your oil. They'll get it right up to the full mark, and then they'll ask you to drive the vehicle. When you get 1,000 miles on it, bring it back, and let's see what's going on. Of course, before they do that, they're going to check for any leaks that it might have, and they may actually put dye inside the oil, which will be exposed under a black light, and they can see if there's any oil seeping out. Is that possible on a new car? It sure is. They're built by humans, right? My brand new Porsche, it used a quart of oil in 500 miles, but I knew that was normal. And see, I can check my oil sitting in my car. I just have to turn the ignition, not all the way on, but just to the accessory, and then I go through a couple of menus, and it'll check my oil for me on that car. But you're probably going to have to pull a dipstick. And, I'd be curious to know how many people that are listening to this program or this podcast, however you get it, know how to raise your hood and where your dipstick is, and then how to check it. You just got to make sure you're on level ground, relatively level. You don't have to get a level out to make sure it's level. If it looks level, that's probably good enough. And then you pull the dipstick out when the vehicle is cold or just slightly warm. You don't do it when it's hot, when the engine's been running. You don't pull into a gas station and then pull your dipstick. That really doesn't do a lot of good. I know they used to do that in the old days. When you had full service at a gas station, you'd pull up and they'd start pumping gas. They'd raise the hood, pull the dipstick, check it, bring it around, and say, you need some oil in it. And you really didn't. They're just trying to sell oil. But it takes a little while for that oil that's circulated throughout the engine to drain back into the oil pan, and that's where the measurement is taken. So you pull the dipstick out, wipe it off, stick it back in there, pull it out again, see where it is on the mark. And, do you know how to read a dipstick? This doesn't take a higher education. There's a F and there's a L, full and low, and sometimes there's just marks. I hope I'm not insulting your intelligence, but there's a lot of people don't have a clue what I'm talking about and why it's important. And they've got a transmission that, has a dipstick. You got to check the fluid in it. It's a different process to do that. But there is nothing wrong with your kid coming home from college and you on a Saturday morning going outside and open up the hood and give them a tour. And make sure that they know where certain things are. I broke down I had a flat tire on let's see, what was that? Mazda MPV. It was my wife's demo. And I went over to a shopping center over here, came back out, my tire was flat. I had no idea where the spare was. I couldn't find it anywhere. And I opened up, it was a new vehicle, and we pull the owner's manuals out of vehicles and store them in the file because they go missing sometimes. Well, guess what? No owner's manual. Finally, I just kept looking and looking, and I saw this. I picked up the floor mat, and saw this little screw, a little cut in the carpet. I lifted up the cut in the carpet, and there's a bolt. I said, I bet that's where it is. So I went and got the tire wrench, which fit that bolt, started turning it, and from underneath the vehicle, it lowered it. He lowered the spare tire. There she was. I bet that took me 30 minutes trying to find that. You should know where your spare tire is. You know, sometimes you might be on some little deserted road and you've got no cell service and there's nobody to rescue you and you don't have a clue how to change a tire, let alone jumpstart your car. How many of you could honestly do that without, having some type of an intervention from somebody? I know what my wife would do if all of a sudden she saw sparks. Now, she knows how to jumpstart a car, I think. If you're listening, I hope you do. If you don't, we'll talk about it this evening. But how to check the air pressure in your tires, how to check your oil, your transmission fluid, how to fill back up with windshield washer solvent between oil changes. Where's your spare tire? Are all your lights working? I mean, you ever seen anybody get pulled over side of the road by the police because they have no brake lights? Because their turn signals aren't working, because they got one headlight out, they'll pull you over for that. It's inconvenient. I don't know that they'll give you a ticket. If they catch you the second time, they probably will. Now, one of the main points I wanted to make is, if I didn't make it already, is all you have to do to get a professional oil change with the actual parts that your car is supposed to have is to make an appointment at the dealership that sells the brand that you're driving. Is it going to cost you any more than the Jiffy Lube? No, it's really not. It's just not as convenient because you have to make an appointment and you have to probably sit there in their lounge for maybe an extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes at most. But I'll tell you what, they're using a multi-point inspection form. Trained people, trained technicians are servicing the car that they're trained to service, and they won't miss anything. Who's changing the oil at those fast lube places? Minimum wagers. They were probably working at McDonald's before they went to work at the Jiffy Lube place. Not that there's anything wrong with McDonald's employees, but, most of the people that work at dealerships, they wanted to work at the dealership. They've got technical backgrounds. They've, worked on small engines their whole life. They know automotive maintenance and how cars work. And they can see stuff. And they're looking for things just to make sure that you're satisfied. Now, I'll probably get some hate mail, emails, text from people who work at these places or own these places, but I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. One interesting change that the manufacturers have, just about all of them done, is they don't really want you under there, under the hood, that is. If you raise the hood, you're going to see a bunch of plastic covers on most cars. And there will be certain little access points where you can check your oil. There'll be a dipstick, and the top of it might be painted yellow or yellow plastic, and then there'll be another, your transmission dipstick, and then your windshield washer solvent. You'll be able to find that tank. But just know where they are. You don't need, or you shouldn't have to take off any of those plastic covers. The only people that need to do that are mechanics that are working on your car because something's wrong, something's broken. So you don't need a degree from Harvard or the University of Tennessee to be able to check those things. But you do need to check them. Not every week, maybe not even every month, but between oil changes at least, check the air pressures in your tires, check your oil level. And your transmission's really not going to burn up any fluid. A lot of those are sealed anyway. You don't need to look at your differential grease. You don't need to probably check your brake fluid unless you've got a really soft pedal. You know what I mean by that? If you push your foot on the brake and it kind of goes to the floor, you've got a problem. You've lost some fluid, or one of your brake calipers has gone bad, or your brakes are worn out. It could be a number of different things. But you want people who know what they're talking about looking at those, not just somebody who's out to sell something because they get a $25 bonus if they upsell you on new wiper blades and new this and that. So, incentivize. Most of those Jiffy Lube places, they have incentivized techs that are working there to sell you stuff. It's kind of like going to Wendy's, you know. Do you want to supersize it? That's what that extra charge package is, that you've supersized it at that point. You know, that's how gas stations get people to buy premium gas. They put signs on it to make you think that it will help your engine, that it's good for your car to at least run, you know, one tank full of premium through your car. That's a bunch of crap. You don't do that. Your car is not made to run on that. It's not good for it. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, tomorrow, you're going to want to listen tomorrow because we're jumping into trade values again. This is an issue that I'm getting a tremendous number of phone calls because I do put my phone number on here. And I it's going on all over the world. I had one from Sacramento, California, day before yesterday. And he said, "What's my car worth?" Except he did it with a California accent. So I'm going to give you some tidbits, some serious dollar tidbits that you can use to, number one, enhance the value of your trade-in before you take it to the dealership, but also know what factors are going into it so that you're not shocked. We had a guy the other day came in on Saturday, and somebody had told him his car's worth $6,000, and we appraised it at $3,000 because of it had an engine noise, lower engine noise, like something to do with the bearings in the lower part of the engine. That's serious. And the transmission was slipping. Now, $3,000 isn't much for a car these days, right? But if those issues, the transmission and the engine, turn out to be valid, we'll have to pay somebody to take the car. And more than likely, both of those situations were the result of the stuff that we've been talking about, not maintaining the vehicle. If you have a CVT transmission, that's a continuously variable transmission, which you will have one if you're driving like most Hondas, Toyotas, a lot of Toyotas, a lot of Kias and Hyundais and Nissans and Subarus. They're not bad transmissions. The reason that the import makers and some domestic makers have used CVTs is because they are a more efficient transfer of power from the engine to the driving wheels. There's no slippage there like what you have when you have a transmission that has a torque converter. They're only about 70% efficient, whereas a CVT is in the 90s. And so that's why they use them, to get better fuel economy. But you've got to keep them serviced. That's critically important. So we're going to talk about some very interesting things as far as trade value, and the 3 key things that you have to think about when it comes to determining the value of your vehicle. Well, thanks for listening. Call me or send me a text, 423-552-2020, or you can send me an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.